Hey, what's up? It's Comic95 The Savior, and for this video I want to talk about a very controversial topic, and I'm going to get a lot of flack from this, in particular from black people, and I know that a lot of white people are going to think that I'm on their side with this, but hear me out. I am not on either person's side, and you'll get what I'm talking about in a second. So, first, I want to start off with saying that I've been in Japan for a minute. I'm an American. I am a black woman myself. And I am somebody that I believe has a good understanding of Japanese culture. And, of course, as an American, I'm also, and as a minority, a black person in the U.S. as well, I have a lot of understanding, and obviously I can relate to the struggles that black people have here in Japan because I am black, and I dealt with most of the things that other people have as well. So, with that said, I want to comment or give my suggestion, my opinion on a post that I saw someone made. I will not share their post. I will not share their name because it is private. I want to talk about the topic and not focus on the person. But this person was basically saying that they've had enough of Japan, that they're, throwing a towel, they're leaving, and they're basically upset with the idea that, they're not allowed to voice, whether it be direct or indirectly, their opinions on so-called political or social issues that are taking place in the world, in particular in the U.S. And this was kind of like their last straw being here in Japan. And again, like if this person's watching this video, my goal is not to attack you, but I do want to give you a different understanding. And for anyone else watching this that may have agreed with this person, excuse me, I want to kind of help them understand things a little bit differently. Now, I will disclose this right away. I have given my 2 cents on some of these topics already. For example, on the BLM movement, I talked about it, and this is very hard for people to understand, so listen very closely and carefully. As a black woman, forget about being a black woman, as a human being, I support the rights of people to live and or survive and to have equal treatment, same treatment as any other citizen. There is a clear bias and there is clear situations in which the police do act in unfair ways, in particular to minorities and black people in particular, more so than any other race, in very unfair manners. And whether people like it or not, the reality is a police officer's job should be the same as somebody in customer service. You don't get to do things that you want to do, if you get what I'm saying. You don't get to act out of anger, out of, force, because somebody's not behaving the way you would like for them to. Your goal is to be the one that takes charge and control without using so-called lethal force. In customer service, you are not allowed to curse someone out, hang up on them, and all type of other crazy stuff that, you would love to do to people because they definitely deserve it. It's your job. I gave scenarios myself where I've had people throw things at me, curse at me, etc. at work, and here I am making $8.35 an hour, but it was my job to put up with this crap. I cannot say, well, hey, she threw that toy at me, so, I jumped over the counter and gave her, piece of my mind. I can't do that. As a police officer, it should be expected that you do the exact same thing. People in customer service can understand this. Why can't police officers? Not to mention, more so, let me get back on subject. My main focus was, I support the idea, not the movement. The problem that I had with the movement was, for starts, it appeared to have just been a money-hungry scheme. The organization ended up being owned by, I believe, a white man in the end of all of this, not even going into black people's pockets. And the black women that were over it, it seemed a little bit sketchy from the get-go. Sure enough, I was right. About a year or two later, there was a lot of talk and conversation about what was really happening with the money, what it was funding, whether it was necessary to make all the purchases and expenses they did, buying luxury like a mansion or some crap. I don't even understand what the crap that was going on. I'm not going to go into all of that crap for this video. My point is this. You can support a movement and not the whole demonstration, protest, etc. That's all I have to say to that. And also want to clarify, my issue isn't so much the protest itself, it's what typically happens and takes place in them. For example, I want people to also recognize that a lot of the reasons why we have the rights and freedoms that we do is because people did protest. Protests themselves are not so much the issue. The problem that I do have is when protests do become violent. But I also want to remind you, violent protests also took place in the past, and they did technically help move things forward. But the problem that I more so have in this situation in particular is we're not dealing with the U.S. We're in Japan. And for that reason, not to say that these issues do not affect Japan, because they most certainly do. Police officers here can and are typically rather racist and or biased. The difference is they don't have weapons in order to act the way that they might want to or accidentally do so. So those type of situations don't take place. And of course, Aside from all of that, generally speaking in Japan, this is my biggest issue. Protests are not so much of a thing, and when they do take place, they don't really help swaying opinions of the general public per se. It doesn't give you the attention that you really want to have, and that's the point that I really want to draw out about this whole situation. I feel like the whole idea of having protests and demonstrations with the whole Black Lives Matter movement, I'm talking about this in particular because this is part of the subject, it's not beneficial like how people want it to be for a few reasons. One, most Japanese people don't understand what you're saying, what you're chanting, what you're handing out, what you're doing. The people that do watch it, all they think to themselves is, this is an American problem, because this particular movement and protest took place in the US. And there's very little conversation about what this has to do with Japan. Not to say that Black Lives Matter is not an issue in Japan, but you get what I'm trying to say. There's no separation, distinguishing of what you're really marching for. And at the end of the day, the whole start for all this marching and crap had to do with the US and not Japan. Thus, the ultimate reason why you're doing this is supposed to be in support for what's going on in the US. And while you might think it does, the reality is it doesn't matter if these protests are only done in the US or if they're done in the US and in Germany or something. It's not going to change anything if it's not being done within the country. Just keeping it real with you. Plus, again, all it's doing is highlighting in the minds of Japanese people, oh, our country's perfect, it's great, there's no problems here. Wow, America's so bad. People are coming all the way over here to do protests, whatever. A lot of people are even joining this just to make YouTube videos, just to have posts to share, just to say that they were a part of the movement and have pictures to show their friends and family in the future. And then for Japanese people, it's just a photo op. They're taking videos, pictures, sharing it on social media, etc. So, my point is this. I also want to remind you, forget about what we think as foreigners. You need to understand what Japanese people think and feel towards these topics. The reality is it's not a matter of what their opinions are. Black Lives Matter, whether you want them to or not. But the issue here is you're not speaking to your audience in a way that is understandable and relatable to them. And if you don't know the audience that you're speaking to, how are you going to reach them? And I'm not just talking about language-wise. I mean, you need to understand culture. The way that you approach and talk to Japanese persons on a personal level. They don't normally like the idea of buying into something in a mass sort of way because something's being forced down their throat, so to speak. I know that sounds really bad to say, but I'm not going to sugarcoat things to be politically correct, so I'm going to keep it real with you. People like to understand things on a personal level. For example, I can say for myself, anytime that I've dated somebody seriously, in fact, I can even say for my own husband, to be totally honest with you, I don't know what his true feelings were on Black Lives Matter before he met me. However, after listening to what I had to say and hearing and seeing what the real issues are, he came to an understanding. Oh, that's horrible. Now I understand this. Oh, now I get it. Otherwise, all you see is, from a Japanese perspective, you're seeing police officers act in a way that's not necessarily appropriate, but then when you listen to other foreigners, most of whom happen to be white and Republican, just keeping it real, it's a downplaying of what's really going on and making it sound like, well, if this person wasn't selling cigarettes, if they didn't run out of their car, if they didn't fight back, then they didn't resist, this would have never happened type thing. And that's a whole other topic to get into. But all I'm trying to say is this. When you're talking to people in a yelling, forcible way, and, you're wearing so-called propaganda like t-shirts and putting up posters, etc., that is not how you get a Japanese person to listen to you, to agree with you, to understand you. If you want people to truly understand your organization, your movement, your race, issues that you deal with as a foreigner, the best way to do that is really on a personal level. I'm not saying you got to go out and date and fuck everybody, but I am saying you need to get to know these people. Talk to people on a personal level. And of course, if you're doing something where it's completely radical and different in the environment that you're working in, you are probably going to get told this is not permissible, you're not allowed to do this. But if you do things in a way where you are incorporating, teaching people about, the struggles and issues that Black people have because they are Black, and you incorporate that into a lesson that you're doing, nobody's going to say no to that for a few reasons. One, they likely won't get the chance to even see what you were planning to do beforehand. And two, it'll be much more, acceptable because they'll see it as having education behind it versus feeling like I'm just the messenger. Hear me out, but I'm going to speak bluntly. Brainwashing the children as a teacher. I'm speaking to you from a Japan perspective, not from a personal perspective. But you have to understand, it's almost like you're speaking with the enemy. You need them to understand where you are coming from. Think about it back in the day when Black people wanted to even have rights to do basic things like being able to, go into a pool together, do whatever together. The way to do this is not necessarily going to be to protest, marching around, wearing t-shirts saying black people deserve to swim too, but rather talking to people, finding ways that you can, speak in public, finding ways that you can get people to understand, look, I'm human too, I'm not dirty, my skin is dark, I'm trying to say, just things like this. I know it does not sound appealing to people, but you have to understand, you are not in America, and it's not just about not being in America, but understanding that not only are you not speaking in a language that is understood natively here, you're coming from a culture that is more aggressive, more direct than what they are used to. And you might think, oh, well, they need to shake up things here. It might work for a couple of people, but for the average Joe, you're not going to be reaching anyone. Because Japanese people, I know it sounds very ironic, but they don't like being told what to do and or what to think, and they prefer to do what everyone else is doing and or thinking simultaneously, which sounds like an oxymoron contradiction. But hear me out. If everyone's thinking, I don't fully agree with this movement, and then you're trying to force somebody to have the same opinion and perspective as you, it's not going to work the way that you want them to. Not to mention, walking around with a BLM t-shirt, etc., is not making people think, oh wow, black lives really do matter. Hey, I saw somebody wearing that, whatever. It just looks like a stereotypical American, so to speak. I can't even explain this in a way that makes sense to you. And I get it. I know I'm going to make a lot of black people mad hearing what I have to say. And maybe some liberal, white, and Hispanic people too, Asian, whatever. But I'm speaking to you bluntly, being honest. Again, this is not entirely just my own opinion. I'm telling you what people think inside this country too. And honestly, I have to kind of agree with that. I've never seen a protest at any point in my life where seeing people walk around chanting, protesting, wearing t-shirts, and screaming, yelling, setting stuff on fire made me think, I think they have a point. I think it would be a lot better if we as a people, regardless of your race, drew attention to what's going on by using this as a teaching lesson and talking about how people are treated differently and unfairly based off of how they look. And thinking of examples that you can use in your classroom as an ALT, presumably, or even as an international school teacher. I did it with my students, and I was just a kindergarten teacher. Talking about unfair treatment that people have, things they cannot help. You did not choose to have curly hair. You did not choose to have dark skin. You did not choose to have the eye color that you have, whatever, things like this. The height that you are. Helping people to understand that, and then explaining to them that depending on where you are in the world, you can be treated worse than, wherever you might be right now. So, for example, people that are in Asia, specifically in Japan, they probably have never had any experience dealing with racism or discrimination of any sort, because most of your students, for starters, have to deal with things like ageism, and really, for the most part, they don't have to deal with sexism either. And on top of that, they're used to everybody around them looking just like how they do. And from their perspective, people that look funny and silly are black and or white people. But have them reimagine what it's like to be in another country. You're the majority now. But imagine going to the US, where now you become the minority. How would you feel if people made fun of you for the shape of your eyes, for, the color of your skin, for, just little things like this, for your height, for the food that you ate? How would that make you feel? Would that make you feel good? People, and in particular students, children, but people in general, learn best from examples that can relate back to them. Help people think about how they would feel. It's the same way that I personally teach children. And I believe you should do the same thing too as a teacher. People learn best when you correct their behavior or their process of thinking by helping them think about themselves. Okay, I understand that you really wanted to play with that toy, but how would you feel if I snatched this toy from you? Would you be happy? No, it wouldn't make you happy, would it? Talk like this. It sounds stupid and crazy. Oh, why would baby in Japanese, whatever. But the point is this. If you want people to change their minds and opinions on stuff, you have to meet them where they are. Even if that means doing things a way that you don't necessarily want to do. Not to mention, I'm sorry, but I have to put this out there too. Why choose to live in a foreign country if you literally don't like the way that they function and do life there? For example, I'm all on board for the idea of trying to draw and bring attention to the issue of black lives. Of course, they do matter. I'm a black person myself. I want to have the same rights and equal treatment as a white or Asian person. I totally understand that. But at the end of the day, I also understand that when I do want to talk about my issues in public, off of YouTube, on YouTube I'm talking to foreigners. But when I go out in public and I'm dealing with actual Japanese people, I understand that getting angry, yelling, and not talking in a way that is clear and, comprehensible, or in a way that they can actually comprehend, like, what the fuck is she saying? What is she getting at? It's not going to help anyone be on my side, fight for my cause, etc. Not to mention, graphic t-shirts aren't really a thing here to begin with, outside of people that are part of subculture, street fashion, whatever type stuff. And even for those type of things, again, How many people can honestly say that their opinions have been swayed, that they decided to join a fight or movement because of a t-shirt? It doesn't work that way. Not to mention, I also have to keep it real with you. If you want to fight for a cause and help people, your workplace is not the place to do that. Start with your friends, your circle of friends, the people that live around you, etc. Join some sort of community or group, etc. Do things in that sort of way. And again, better than doing any type of stuff, because honestly, those things don't really help so much either. I feel like you would help people a lot more if you wanted to do this through private lessons, if you want to do this through talking to people and getting to know them, and not where you're just talking to them constantly about political and social issues, but rather finding ways where you can incorporate letting people know what your life is like in your home country, what life is like for you where you are right now, talking about personal experiences and relating it back to the BLM movement, rather than trying to use your work or whatever situations to turn it into a social issue, because it's really not a political issue, but whatever, it gets mixed to the two, political, social issues, whatever. Some people might find it interesting and will listen, but for other people they might find it really uncomfortable, just keeping it real, because okay, why are we talking about this, and this is Japan? But that's the other issue. I feel like Black Lives Matter did not take off the way that it should have in Japan, because the focus was too heavily dealing with the fact of what's going on in the U.S. and not relating it back here to Japan, which of course is nice to support the U.S. and the issues there, but the problem is when you're only focusing on the U.S., which despite people trying to say, oh, it's talking about Japan too, no it's not, because go up to the average Japanese person and they do not think that that movement had anything to do with Japan. In fact, when people were complaining about it taking place, they were even saying, why are they doing this crap here? Like, this is a problem for the U.S., COVID, whatever. And so again, I get what people are trying to say, but you have to understand you are not in the U.S. You need to understand your audience. You literally learn this when you go to university about talking to people and making your point and having an argument. You need to meet people where they are. You need to know your audience. If you don't know your audience, you already lost argument. So I almost had to sneeze. Sorry about that, you guys. I had to sneeze. But anyway, it blows my mind that people come to Japan and they get disappointed that they're not able to live and do things the way that they used to back in the U.S. So don't get me wrong, of course, as a foreigner here myself, there are plenty of things that I don't like about being here. I talk about that. There's things that I dislike, but I'll never use those as an excuse for why I'm going to leave Japan per se. Of course, people do things. It's your own life. You can do whatever you want to. But I just think it's so silly when I see adults, especially people that are older than I am, that choose to give up and leave Japan because of basic common sense things they could have found out before coming here, so to speak. And it's so weird because people come to Japan, they want to live in a foreign country, but they want to have the exact same life they had back in their home country. And this is a whole other video, but it's not just a matter of social and political issues and whatnot. But even with food, even with the way that they, make friends, etc., people want their life to be exactly as it was in their home country. But they want sort of like a clean slate in a way too, which makes no sense to me. So again, I understand the struggles of assimilation, of getting used to being somewhere different, but you have to understand, a part of you moving to Japan means that you have to learn how to assimilate and change the way that you do things. Do you not think the people that move to the U.S. are just, totally, do you think people that move to the U.S. are totally in love with the way that we do everything, the way that we talk about everything, etc.? For example, from a Japanese perspective, coming to America has to be very uncomfortable. For starters, we're extremely physical. We hug, we shake hands, etc. People get angry in public a lot more easily. On top of that, you have to deal with the fact that in social circumstances, you're expected to have an opinion on everything. And if you don't have an opinion, and or if you have an opinion but you're not strongly opinionated, people either view you as stupid and or they'll take advantage of you. These are issues that do not exist in Japan. So little things like that. For example, growing up in Japan, even especially as an adult, you grow up believing that alcohol is a pretty normal drink, but it's just for adults. And of course, teenagers and whatnot start doing that crap because nobody's really checking to make sure that you don't. But long story short, people literally just don't understand that this is a Japan thing, and I know Europeans do too, but specifically in the U.S., if you go around doing this type of stuff on a daily basis, like how people do here in Japan, getting wasted, and you're passed out and vomiting on the street, etc., people think you have an issue, and they'll try to get you into rehab or some crap, okay? It's not normal in our culture, but for them, especially, if you're in your 30s or whatnot, you grew up, you spent the last, 10, 15 years or whatever doing this crap. So to have to go almost cold turkey and stop doing that might be hard for some people. And the idea of people thinking poorly of you and that you have an issue, a problem, you're alcoholic, that's to be hard to handle. That's just one of many problems. So again, it's a cultural difference. If you're going to choose to live in the US, you're going to have to change the way that you think about certain things, the way that you do certain things, because our culture is simply different. We talk more. You're expected to keep in, contact and communication with your friends more. And that's something that, even for myself as an American, has definitely been hard to deal with being here in Japan. For example, it's not just me, even my husband. He has only Japanese friends. And his Japanese friends do not talk to him on a daily basis, but they're all still really good friends. They plan to hang out on typically a monthly basis, sometimes a couple of times per month. They're still the best of friends, but they have lives. They do other things. They have wives. They have kids. Some of them aren't even married, but they just do their own thing. You make time for each other when you have time. In America, typically speaking, you kind of talk to your friends on a weekly basis at least, but monthly, sometimes you can go more than a month that I've seen your friends in Japan. It could be months, every few months, every couple of months, whatever. It's totally normal here. So I just want to explain to you, again, things that you might be okay with, somebody else probably isn't in your country as well. And I get it, this is a social issue that you want to raise awareness to, especially as a black person, because it affects your life. But you have to understand, it's not just a matter of the movement itself, it's a fear of how you're portraying it, how you're approaching it, how you're talking about it, that makes people uncomfortable. For example, yes, people might not like the idea of you plastering posters up in the hallways, etc. But if you made a nice lesson that taught people English and taught people about the experiences that people have, of course, in a way that is appropriate for children. And again, it's about meeting the audience where they are. You might think, well, how is this fair? We could talk about, this happened in history and war, whatever, but I can't talk about, police doing X, Y, Z. I totally understand you, but hear me out. I don't make the rules. I'm just a messenger. Meet people where they are. You don't even necessarily have to bring up the police part of it. Just talking about race. Starting it off on a lower level, talking about differences that we have, talking about personal experiences. That'll touch students a lot more, hearing about how this has affected you, of course, in an appropriate way. That'll be a lot more impactful than having a teacher talking about some black guy that they don't know, that they may have saw on TV or whatever. You know what I'm trying to say? Like, it almost seems like I'm talking about it from a Japanese perspective. It seems like they're trying to scare or force people into believing and are supporting your cause, your group, your whatever. And from a Japanese perspective, this whole movement seems really radical and crazy and political. You have to understand where they're coming from. Your goal as an educator or as a black person, as an American, as a whatever you want to call it, should be to try to change this narrative and help people understand that is not the case. And that's the issue that I have with the movement myself. The problem that I have with it is other people that look at the situation that are not going to be willing to do the research to actually understand what's really going on, they're going to view it as some sort of radical movement, which is kind of what it turned into, to be honest, instead of it being a matter of raising awareness and attention to the fact that black people are being untreated by the police. Also, while this is not fair, I'm just going to keep it real, not sugarcoating it, when people are doing things like retaliating by fighting against the police and setting things on fire and stealing things, etc., unfortunately, for the peaceful protesters and the people that are doing things the right way, it unfortunately discredits them. Because now people that don't want to support black people or the movement, they will highlight and focus this. And so don't get it twisted. Japanese people are seeing this stuff too. And that was one of the concerns they had when this protest was going to take place. Will the police be monitoring them to make sure that black people are, not taking their protests and smashing at the stores and stealing crap, etc. in Japan too and setting things on fire? That was a huge concern here. A lot of you guys missed that part because you're too focused on trying to have your protests, too focused on trying to take your pictures and videos for YouTube and Instagram, and you completely miss who your audience is. You are not dealing with Americans. You are not dealing with British people. You are not dealing with Aussies. You are dealing with Japanese people. It doesn't matter what you think. It doesn't matter how you believe it should be approached. You need to think of how they think it should be approached. Think about how Japanese people are more willing to listen. In my experience, people are more willing to listen to me talk about race and personal issues when they get to know me, and or when I share my own personal experiences on how my experience has been with dealing with the police, and on my experience with growing up as a black person, and my experience being black in Japan. People like to hear your stories, not stories from other people, not posters up on walls, not t-shirts. People will not ask, hey, what's this poster? Hey, what's your t-shirt all about? People don't do that. Maybe in the US, possibly. But in Japan, that's not really a thing. At best, somebody might want to take a picture of or with you because they're seeing some radical, crazy black foreigner wearing a BLM t-shirt. But you also have to understand that even for the Japanese staff, there's probably moves and causes, including BLM, that they may support. But you're not going to see them putting up posters and wearing t-shirts. Why? It's a cultural difference. They understand that in the workplace, it's not appropriate to do such a thing. It doesn't matter whether you think, well, these are the people who need to hear this. I totally understand. But it's not seen as appropriate to do. It's a cultural difference. You don't have to agree with it. I'm just explaining to you. There's some things that you do have to understand. You are here to work. You are here to get paid. You are not here to spread awareness to social and or political issues. It's not your job here. But as a teacher and as an educator, and especially as a black one, I do highly encourage you to do so. But do so in a way that is appropriate for a teacher to do. And while this might be okay in the U.S., possibly, even though I imagine this might be met with some issues in the U.S. too, it is definitely not okay to do here in Japan. Because all it takes for a parent to say that and complain, well, I don't really support this, or I don't want my kid to become a part of that, or, a lot of people really don't understand BLM. They have misunderstood it because it has not been represented in the best way possible. They've had mixed reactions. They've seen, okay, the police are doing this, but then they get the other side of the story and they don't understand that, okay, yes, we get it, he was doing whatever, but that's kind of the job of the police. You're supposed to do people that are breaking the law, not people that are being do-gooders and following the law. That's kind of your job. You're not supposed to kill them, though, for not doing it. You know what I'm trying to say? Not in those circumstances. I've literally watched FBI Files and saw inside the comments and people got mad over it. And I'm literally seeing white people, doing, I can't say the words, YouTube, holding people up and robbing places with weapons. And what happens? The police will they'll have a you-know-what out, but they will do anything they can to avoid ending these people's lives, even if they're begging for it to be done. But had it been a black person, we all know that they would have been gone, like, hours ago during this whole chase. What situation is going on? They don't care whether you live or die. So much to it. I'm not going to get into all of that crap. All I want to say is this. Understand your audience. Understand where you are. And understand that, yes, I get it. It might suck at times. You might disagree. I don't fully agree with how everything goes to read. That's not my point. Hear me out. It's not about my opinion. And I do not fully support and agree with everything that they have that goes on here. But I will say, I do understand that to a certain degree because, again, it's a cultural difference. They don't fully understand the situation because even when they've had foreigners that have spoken on the situation, they've dealt with a lot of people that were anti-BLM and thus it gave them a foreign perspective from another American, which are, this American's saying that this is a crazy bad movement, whatever. I think he's making a good point, especially when they're getting this information in Japanese, which unfortunately, gotta keep real with you, most black people that are trying to talk to Japanese people about this topic anyway, you're not even speaking to them in Japanese. So they're not going to really be able to fully understand what you're saying, if any of what you're saying at all. People don't want to send their kid to school to deal with, I'm sorry, being real, political, social issues going on in the U.S. They don't see how this relates back to, Japan. Not to mention, I feel like you're kind of hurting your cause too at the end of the day, because if we're heavily focusing on BLM, which again, this is an American movement, why don't we make our own movement and own cause, whatever, in Japan? For us. Because using the same title, same name, same whatever, it does not hold the same weight. Because for them, they're going to view it as an American issue, not think, they're protesting unfair, unjust treatment here in Japan. People are not getting that message. That's the real issue. If you're living in Japan, why do you care about what's going on in the U.S. anyway? Enough to protest for it in a foreign country. If you want to support it, give your money, go to the U.S. and protest there. But even then, you know what I'm trying to say? At the end of the day, the problem with all these movements are just that. Ultimately, the people at the top that are accepting your donations are making money off of you. I believe in supporting the cause on a social level without putting my coins into it. Because the problem is when they claim to use this money to bail people out, etc., the vast majority of the money that you're giving these people is going into their pockets. And oftentimes these movements aren't even owned and run by us, but rather white people that are profiting off of this. So I'm not going to get into all of that crap. It's a whole nother video, whole nother story. But I just want to say, please understand your audience, understand the country that you're in before you choose to live it, and understand that yes, a part of living in a foreign country, not just Japan, means giving up some of the things that you like and that you're used to. For example, I really, really hate people bumping into me, pushing me, cutting me in line, etc. But because I'm in Japan, I have to understand this is a cultural thing. I cannot tell you how many times I've been waiting on a train and someone cuts the line And I'm like, I waited here to purposefully get a good spot. I've had moments I wasn't even trying to cut someone, but they thought that I was trying to cut them, and they make sure they get around me to make sure they get on first. Little things like that. That really has pissed me off. But I have to understand, it's a cultural difference. In Japan, you don't get mad at people for bumping into you. In the U.S., like, you know, stank out like, damn, bitch, watch it, like that. I had to understand, okay, cultural difference. This is okay in Japan, but in America, it's not okay. It's also okay as an American in Japan to feel frustrated about this. But you have to understand, you chose to live where you do. Nobody's forcing you to live in Japan. Even if you're from a developing country, you chose to live here. You chose to work here. You chose to make money here. At the end of the day, of course, if you don't really like it, like how this person was saying, yeah, you can surely go home. But do understand, if you ever choose to go to another country, again, you're going to deal with the same type of situation. Not necessarily with that social issue, so to speak, but with other issues in your day-to-day life. I always come across things that I don't like and I don't agree with, and I oftentimes have to come back and think to myself, okay, but I am living in a foreign country. This is how things go. I don't fully agree with it. And in this case, I also got to keep it real with you. At least your situation is you're not allowed to do this at work, where people are not allowing you to put up your posters and or to, I don't know, hold meetings about stuff or wear t-shirts, but whatever. And again, just keeping it real with you, from a professional perspective, I don't believe it's appropriate to do even in the US. And I personally, if I were to have hired you, I don't think it would be appropriate to do as a teacher. I just don't. I believe that if you want to send a good message to people wearing a t-shirt that has anything graphic written on it, it would be better just to have a t-shirt talking about how we're all equal, etc. You don't have to get into the detail of organizations, etc. That does become problematic, in my personal opinion. And this is the reason why I have an issue with BLM. Because the problem is, when you're supporting an organization, the people at the top of the organization and whatever moves the organization makes will be, looked at underneath the magnifying glass. It will be criticized. It will be judged. But if you're supporting a general idea, which is that we are, all human beings, we're all equal, we come in different shades, different colors, different shapes, that is a general idea that everyone will be okay with and will have no problem with. So I suggest that if you truly want to wear a t-shirt and truly want to have a conversational piece, save it for a day in which you have a lesson plan, not for a regular everyday thing. In support of the idea of all lives matter. That's not what I'm getting at here. I'm not telling you to wear an All Lives Matter t-shirt. But I'm saying, if you want to make a point and try to wear something that is statement clothing-wise, wear something that is not specifically saying BLM or anything like that. Because the problem isn't that people have an issue with you saying that black people are important. It's the fact that the organization has been misrepresented, unfortunately, thanks to a lot of white people and Asians that don't understand what BLM actually is. They are looking at the organization and not the cause itself. And this is why I said I have a problem when we get these movements and they become actual charity organizations, because then whoever is over it, they become the representation of it. And anytime something so-called bad happens or dangerous or something that's not agreeable by everyone, it appears as though this is what everyone supports. Everyone is, part of this radical, political, whatever movement type thing. So that's the issue that's at hand. And with that said, you want to wear something that basically talks about how, black people are human too. Basically, that humanizes black people. I'm not saying wear an All Lives Matter t-shirt, but you get what I'm trying to say. Just avoid anything that says BLM on it, and nobody's going to have a problem with it. The issue is you're wearing a shirt that's actually an organization, and the organization is extremely controversial, just keeping it real. Unfortunately, again, like how I said, black people constantly allow these things to happen. We have movements, and we let them get tied up with a single organization, and then this is used as, a scapegoat, for lack of a better term, and then instead of acknowledging, okay, black people are being mistreated by the police, instead people point their fingers and be like, hey, look at this violent, dangerous, radical movement. Look at these crazy black people and white libtards or whatever. Look at what they're doing. They're setting stuff on fire. They're dangerous. And you know what I'm trying to say? Like, it takes away from the actual movement. I understand what's going on. I'm saying your audience. This is not about preaching to me or to other black people. Your goal is to reach out to white, Asian, Hispanic people and help them understand. And with that said, you're not going to be reaching anyone if you don't meet them where they are. You don't have to agree with their opinions or agree with where they are, but you need to understand where they are at and find a way, basically a loophole. For example, when I did the lessons and talked to my own students, I didn't ask for permission to do a lesson on race or hair, etc. I did it on my own. In fact, I did kind of hint to my boss, that I had some issues in my classroom dealing with that. And I'll be honest, I had a nice boss that kind of suggested that I do something like that. But I didn't tell them exactly what I was going to talk about. Because to be honest, if I did, they probably wouldn't have been okay with it. And even my assistant teacher that was Japanese, she seemed a little bit, I'm not sure if you should be doing this at work. But I did it in a way that was appropriate for their age, appropriate for Japan, and that avoided talk about anything that could potentially be seen as political, scary, etc. I gave real advice, and I helped them understand that, everyone looks different, comes from different cultures, has different hair, different complexions, eats different food, but we are all human. And while you might think things about me are funny, like, I have a big nose, or, I have big lips, or I have curly, afro hair, whatever, things like this, people will think things about you are funny if you go somewhere like in America where Asian people are a rare thing to see. So just helping people understand on a personal level, giving them a story where they can relate to you and giving them a potential scenario that will relate to them. It's the same way that you teach children. Children don't understand that hitting people is bad until they get hit themselves. So you have to teach them, how would you feel if I decided to hit you because I wanted something? You wouldn't be happy about that. Make you feel sad. You feel like I'm bullying you because I'm bigger than you. Well, then how do you think the other kids feel when you hit them and take things from them because you're bigger than them or you're stronger than them, etc.? So all the whole other story, just want to clarify that because I know that didn't sound right, like listening back to this. I'm not telling you to wear All Lives Matter t-shirt. I do not agree with that. And of course, this is just a white scapegoat once again. We know that all lives matter. The focus is that people act like black lives don't specifically. Nobody a part of the BLM movement is saying that white people don't matter and that we're the only ones that do matter. The reason why we even have to make this movement to begin with is because people act like we don't, like we're subhuman, and we don't matter. We're like dogs. They can shoot us, kill us, and it doesn't make a difference. That's the issue. I know that. I'm saying other people do not. And again, I'm trying to teach you a little method, figuring around their rules. You don't have to like it. You have to understand. If you want to reach your audience, you have to adjust the way that you talk about things, protest about things, mention things, etc., to meet them where they are. You're not going to move a Japanese person by wearing a t-shirt, putting up posters, yelling, screaming, etc., and talking about what you saw on the news or what's going on inside of another country. You need to bring it back to Japan and help them understand situations and scenarios here where you have been treated unfairly. Your friends have been treated unfairly, your family, etc., here in Japan, and or even some examples in the U.S. But the problem that I have is when we use examples of solely Japan so much, or not solely Japan, opposite, the U.S. so much, or other foreign countries, Japanese people think these problems don't exist in Japan. They don't believe that there's any racism here. There's no problems here. And it just completely blows my mind. In fact, I'll give you another little off-subject scenario, but I'll save this for another video. I'll make it real quick and then I'll end it here. Literally everyone that I've ever dated, for the most part, they had no idea that Japanese people avoid being next to foreigners. And their mind is blown. They're like, well, you're cute. You have all of these likes, matches, whatever on these dating apps, blah, blah, blah. And people, yes, people avoid sitting next to me, standing next to me. They cough at me. They, get all grunty, making nasty sound effects, etc. They will cross the street. They do all type of stuff to avoid being near me. And it's hurtful. And they are just in total disbelief. And it's like, you're Japanese. You live here. It's an unwritten rule. So don't you know this too? But depending on, how they grew up, where they lived, the type of schools they went to, they are just totally unaware. And I'm sure some of them have lied to me as well. But you get what I'm trying to say? It takes meeting someone and realizing, hey, Japanese people are some pretty crappy people. I can use my own husband as an example, and I promise I'm done. It took him going to immigration with me to see just how badly Japanese people treat foreigners in this country. So I'm done with that. I'll make another video talking about these things, but I just want to explain to you that I'm not supporting all lives matter ideas or t-shirts, etc. It is a fallacious argument and a dumb excuse to make Black Lives Matter seem like it's a radical movement by implying they're saying only black people matter. This is no different than, the white power and KKK, whatever. You get what I'm trying to say. My alarm is going off, so let me stop and get back to the video. Just wanted to say that and explain that because, again, this sounded bad listening to it. I wanted to clarify what I was saying.
Not to mention, again, avoid organization names. The subject is your goal that you want to talk about. You want to talk about that we are important, that we're being treated unfairly. Is it really necessary that you have to advertise for BLM per se? Like, you see what I'm trying to say? whole nother story. Not gonna get into that. I'm done. Y'all gonna drag me and hate me for this, but I'm keeping it real. Give my own 2 cents, my own opinion. People oftentimes think, this is the problem I have with the Democratic Party. Sorry to get political, gotta keep it real. Because we are black, which is true for most black people, we don't think for ourselves. We vote for whoever the Democratic nominee is. We are swayed easily by somebody claiming that they're for us, that they're gonna do things for us, etc. And it definitely makes it hard, especially dealing with, the Republican side, where you oftentimes have people that don't give a damn, excuse my language, about black issues. But at the same time, it's also insulting that people don't even have to try hard for us. It's just be a Democrat and you get our vote. So people always assume that I am in support of BLM because I'm a black person, and they assume that I'm a Democrat because I am a black person, and neither of those things are true. So again, I'm a very balanced person. I see things on both sides, legitimately. I agree with some things that Republicans have to say. I've said this before. I agree with some things that Democrats have to say. And again, overall, I do agree with the idea that black lives do matter. But the problem is the company itself, the movement itself. Sorry, you guys. I got gas. I got the having pop earlier. But the movement itself is the issue that I have. The organization is the issue that I have. The movement itself, technically, if you're talking about just... When I say the movement, I keep mixing up the two. The organization's issue. The movement, meaning the cause, is what I support. I don't support the organization. And the reason being is, like how I said, you never know what people are doing with the money, what their real goal is. And unfortunately, again, when you have like a whole organization like that, all it takes is one slip up and it makes the whole thing lose credibility. You might think, oh, well, that shouldn't matter, etc. It's not about what we think as black people. You need to understand the purpose in the movement is to get attention from other races of people to help them understand that we are being treated unfairly. And that's the issue that a lot of people have here in Japan. You think that because you want to do things a certain way, that you like things a certain way, that this is the way it should go. So, for example, you think wearing a t-shirt is fine, putting up posters is fine, etc. But you have to understand, you're not reaching your audience that way, the way that you want to. If you want to reach your audience, helping them understand people ending their lives, or people, whatever, people getting harmed by police, people having issues with mental health issues, etc., you're not going to reach them that way. You need to talk to them on a personal level. People get so caught up wanting to do things the way that they like. And you have to remember, your audience is what matters, not you. Black people already know that our lives matter. Our point is to reach white, Hispanic, Asian people, help them understand that our lives matter. You see what I'm trying to say? You're not going to reach them when you're catering towards a black audience, doing things the way that you think they want to understand, instead of doing it the way that they want to understand you, which is in a more calm, professional way. It does not rub people the right way hearing that, and it sounds like whatever to them. But again, I'm just being real with you. You have to know your audience to win the argument, to win the fight, to get the support that you want. You also have to understand there's a time and place for everything too. And sometimes, while they might generally say the idea of what you're doing, they don't accept. If you do things in a way like how I said, where you're not supporting a direct organization, and where you slip it in to conversations that you're having with students, slip it in to lesson plans that you have, nobody's going to say no to that. But if you make an entire lesson plan BLM, you have an entire poster that says BLM, you have on a t-shirt that says BLM, everything about you, like your whole life is just advertising for this organization, that's going to be problematic. You have to meet them where they are. Your boss, your coworkers, your students, their parents don't understand BLM the way that you and I do. They don't see it that way. They see it as a radical organization, and the idea of a teacher doing this seems really crazy because they never see teachers wearing so-called propaganda t-shirts and support. It's just a strange thing to see here. So you have to meet people where they are. You don't have to agree with their mindset on it, but you have to understand this is what they feel most comfortable with. And if you want to reach that audience and change their minds and opinions on it, you have to meet them where they are, not where you want them to be. So, think about it this way, from a religious perspective. Sorry guys, my nose. Think about it from a religious perspective. For most people, is someone going to change your mind on whatever your religious beliefs are by wearing a t-shirt? For example, okay, let's give this example, a Jehovah's Witness. If you're working with a Jehovah's Witness and they have up posters in their classroom about Jehovah's Witness organizations, they have a Jehovah's Witness t-shirt, and they're passing out flyers. I mean, they go door to door to a lot of you guys' houses, even here in Japan. Is that going to change your mind about who you believe in? Whether you believe in, Jesus Christ as your Lord and Savior or not, or if, you're a Muslim, or if you're a Catholic, or whatever. Is that going to change your mind? More than likely, no. You're going to view them as crazy, annoying, and think, okay, well, they're doing the same thing to you. There, I said it bluntly, so. And I said this as a black person. Again, I want to support the organization, but I can't because I see that it has problems. I do, however, support the cause, the movement overall, which is that we do matter. I do want attention to be brought to these subjects, and I have taught on these issues myself. But the way that I did was very differently. Instead, I help the students to understand that people get treated unfairly on a daily basis around the world, including here in Japan, including I myself as their teacher, because I look different, because I am different, because I eat different food, because I'm a different height, because I'm a different weight, because I'm a different complexion, I have a different hair texture, I have different features. I help them to understand this. And now it's relatable because they know me. I'm their teacher. They can see me. And it was hurtful to them. What? My teacher, Miss Ren? Really? It was a lot more personal. I also helped them understand, how do you think you would feel if this happened to you? That's a better way to approach things. So I'm done with this video. Please leave your 2 cents down below. Do you understand what I'm saying? And I understand what this person's saying too. Again, I totally understand their feelings because I've definitely had situations where I was told that I couldn't do things that I wanted to do at work. But I really just think this person's to cool down, take a step back, and recognize, okay, maybe I did make a mistake. Maybe I could have handled this differently. Maybe I should have approached it in a different way, been more understanding. And I hope this person doesn't truly choose to leave Japan. I understand the frustration of being here. I make videos about being frustrated all the time. But I thought this was a good topic to talk on because I believe that a lot of people think this and feel this way. So yeah, leave your 2 cents down below. What do you think about this? What would you personally do? Do you agree with me? Do you disagree with me? It's okay to disagree. Yeah, please leave a comment down below. If you haven't already, please like this video and subscribe to my channel. You can you can follow me on Instagram and Twitter at Comic95. I have a Snapchat and TikTok at Comic the Savior. I have a Facebook fan page at Comic95 the Savior and a blog at Comic95.com. I have tons of playlists on just about everything here in Japan, working, studying, dating, living in Japan. So if you have any questions about those things, please check out my YouTube channel's homepage. I've probably already made a video answering your question. And yeah, if you have any more topics or questions dealing with Japan, please feel free to leave a comment below asking your question, or you can send me an email with your video idea or question, and I'll try my best to make a video answering it in the future. So that's all for right now. Thank you for listening and thank you for watching, and I hope you'll watch another video. Bye.